Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics like wealth creation strategies, investment principles, creating passive income, paying off your debt faster, and much, much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host
Andrew. Bills, here we are. We're back again for another podcast.
Andrew, we are back again and exciting. We're back in the recording studio and ready to deliver a bunch of value to our listeners and our viewers.
Yes, absolutely. So what are we talking about today, Bills?
Well, look, we thought we'd do a little bit of a deeper dive in terms of what to actually expect when seeing a financial advisor. So we talk about this, I guess, week in, week out around financial advice, financial planning, some of the concepts, some of the things that we talk about with people, but really wanted to position this to get into people's, I guess, their thinking around some of the things that they should be thinking about when going to see a financial advisor, what to expect when seeing a financial advisor, and really to try and demystify a bit of, I don't know, maybe the misconceptions out there around what do you get when you go and see a financial advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, look, one of the first questions that sort of a lot of people ask, and especially if you haven't received advice before, is what does a financial advisor actually do? So what do we do, Billy?
We do it all.
Exactly.
What don't we do? No, look, in terms of sort of a broad brush statement, and it's I'm not going to do this justice because I think it's really difficult to define in a sentence, but the way that I like to describe it to people is that we help people make better decisions surrounding their money.
Yep.
That's the way that I tend to describe it in a really succinct sentence. In reality, it goes a lot deeper than that, which we'll get into in a sec. But yeah, essentially it's helping people. The majority of the people that we help tend to come to us with kind of like an idea or a predefined issue that they're trying to solve for. And it's usually one thing that gets them in front of a financial advisor. And then usually when we're unpacking that and sort of digging a little bit deeper, we tend to unpack and peel back the layer of the onions to get, there's more to it, I guess.
Yeah. So usually there's, one kind of specific pain point, or there's one specific area that the people want to receive advice on. And once you kind of, keep digging and talking a little bit further, then you get an understanding of the broader scope of, all of the things that you usually need to, start considering.
Yeah, absolutely. The process of getting advice, Andrew, what does that usually look like? It's pretty consistent in terms of our approach and how we tackle it. That approach is consistent and the same for most people. In terms of the approach, the content that we talk about, the issues that we deal with and tackle is obviously different. But let's break that down. What does it look like? How does that work for the clients that we deal with in our business?
Yeah. So, look, I guess it's more or less quite similar, and you can kind of pick it up or you can kind of chop and change a few little things. But for the most part, most advisors are going to do things in a similar way. But for us and our business, your initial pain point will usually lead to reaching out to a financial advisor. You'll have an initial 15-minute clarity call, is what we like to call it. So that's where we jump on a phone call, jump on a Zoom call, and just get an understanding of where are you at. What's your pain point? What's your situation? Is it something that we can help with? Sometimes, we'll get questions around tax, for instance, which we can certainly help, strategies on how to, minimize your tax. But once we're talking about, doing a tax return or actually a tax, specific related question, we're referring to an accountant. But in that sort of initial clarity call, we're just discussing, what's the reason for reaching out, and if it's broader in nature, getting an understanding of what are your circumstances, where are you at, and where could we potentially tie in and help out.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that one, and it's always difficult for us or for me in particular, keeping it to 15 minutes, I think. But we do say it does take 15 minutes. Maybe it runs a little bit longer, but I'll give an example of somebody that I spoke to yesterday regarding this. But same sort of thing as what we were describing. They came to us because there was a specific pain point in particular, and not that it was painful, but it was that they're receiving an inheritance. Yep. Okay, what do we do with the inheritance? And that seems like a fairly straightforward advice need. And yes, we did tackle that, and there was some general discussions about what you could do. But I dug a little bit deeper to get an understanding of their circumstances and basically came up with a few different areas that we could look at that would provide benefit for them in their position. So it wasn't just, hey, we're getting this lump sum amount of money, what can we do with it and where should we put it? It's like, okay, what else is there? And we spoke about a few different things, and now there's 4 things in the scope of advice. The investment or the handling of the inheritance is one thing, but there was another 3 that got uncovered during that time, and yeah, that's what happened in that instance.
Yeah, and that's I think consistent, all of the time, and probably with, I dare say, almost every single clarity call that we're having with a client is there's an initial thing that causes someone to, or sparks someone into reaching out.
Yep.
And then off the back end of that, there's usually 3, 4, 5 other things that we also want to tackle that are also going to tie into it.
Yep. So we get the clarity call out the way.
Yep. So we've got the clarity call out the way, and then we're moving off to basically an initial consult.
Yep.
That's where we're either sitting down face to face, having a Zoom meeting. Generally takes about an hour or so. And before that, we've usually gotten some information from a client, so we know their assets, their income, their expenses, all the basic things that we want to kind of get out of the way and start digesting before we get into the meeting. And then we're starting to talk about goals and objectives, what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to get to. For most people, the starting point's a pretty easy answer. Yep. We know where we're at, or most people know have a fair idea of where they're at financially. Where we want to get to is sometimes the more difficult question to answer, and it takes a little bit of coaching and it takes a little bit of discussion to try and formulate where we're heading towards and what we're trying to achieve off the back end of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point as well too, because in terms of financial advice, I think there's a conception out there that you're going to create a greater level of wealth for me. But what I guess isn't as well known as what I think it should be is that coaching piece in terms of flushing out, okay, this is where you're at, this is where you want to get to, what does that look like, what does that mean, what are the trade-offs associated with it? And I really see that as quite a valuable piece of the puzzle, because everybody's looking for, I shouldn't say everybody, but the vast majority of people are looking for being financially secure. But what does that mean? It's different for everybody. Yeah. So unpacking and unflushing and having somebody to coach you through, hey, what does this mean for me? What does it look like for me? I think is critically important from that perspective, and that definitely happens in that meeting. And probably the other thing associated with this is just to be clear that there's no solution that actually pops out of this meeting. From our perspective as the advisors, it's just getting that information in terms of the client's circumstances, trying to drill down on certain areas, trying to unpack certain things and coach through certain things, understand goals, understanding what it looks like, but there's no solution that comes out of that meeting.
Yeah, exactly right. Look, you might have a broad sort of objective that you're trying to get towards, or something that you've developed off the back end of the meeting sort of from a high level, but we're not deciding on exactly what we're trying to achieve. We're not deciding on our specific strategy on exactly how to get there off the back end of that meeting. So usually what we're doing after that is going back within that meeting, we're agreeing on the scope of what we're trying to achieve, right? We've worked out our goals, we've worked out our circumstances, we've worked out a scope of what we're trying to achieve. That's when we'll present a fee estimation, estimation on what we deem the strategy will likely look like, and we're going back and starting the research preparation off the back end of that. Mm-hmm. Which is a fairly labor intensive process. We do our due diligence on obviously a client's existing circumstances, existing products, the strategy that we're heading towards, what's going to help facilitate meeting that strategy objective, and assuming that it is, because there are instances where,
Yep.
we go back, start doing the work, and we need to address the goal, or we need to address something in order to, help facilitating that goal, because it's just not possible to, achieve what we're trying to achieve. But for the most part, we're developing the strategy after that meeting, and then we're, presenting the recommendation on how to get to that specific goal in the next meeting afterwards.
Yeah, the way I tend to describe it to people, the position that I always tend to take is, if you maintain the status quo, this is kind of like your glide path, and this is where you'll end up.
Yep.
So from our perspective, taking into consideration all of that information that we gathered during the first meeting and unpacking and unflushing those goals and what's important to people, is then saying, okay, if we take all of that and we make changes and we try and optimize your position, what does it look like moving forward? So we stress test that against a whole range of different things. And realistically, for us as advisors, and this is the same across the industry, but it's all about strategy. So in terms of what we tackle first, what strategy do you need to deploy? One, to optimize the position that you're in, and two, at the same time, what do we need to do in order to achieve your goals? So it's all about the strategy for us. Product is a secondary consideration. Is there a product that you've already got that can get you there? If there is, fantastic, keep doing what you're doing. If there's not and you need a new product, we take that into consideration. We look across the market against different product providers and we go for it from that perspective. If you've got a product that you've got that either you're not happy with or is not necessarily performing or achieving what it is that you want it to achieve, if that's not, doing its thing, we'll look across the board and find something that's more appropriate for your needs and your circumstances as well too.
Yep. And that's all presented in one document for a client.
Yep.
We're running through it in our next consultation. Is, hey, this is the strategy that's going to help you achieve those goals. These are some of the changes that we need to make. Or, this part of your strategy is great. There's no need to alter that part of it. Let's have a hold recommendation on that, but let's make some adjustments on, another specific area. Off the back of that is, these are the products that are going to help going to help achieve your financial goals. Yep. We'll obviously run through, cost comparisons. We'll be running through projections. We'll be running through how it's going to, help and assist to meet those goals. And usually at the end of the next meeting, where we've presented all of the products, all of the strategies and everything that we're going to, do to help facilitate it, we're then signing off on it and implementing it on behalf of our clients as well.
Yep. Who should see an advisor and when should they see an advisor?
Well, this is perhaps an answer that you're expecting. That's why Billy's laughing here. But look, who should see an advisor? My honest to God answer is everyone. I think that everyone can benefit from financial advice, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, because you're seeing a financial advisor, you need to, start engaging with a financial advisor. Some people can benefit from having just one consultation and knowing that, hey, you're on the right path. You probably don't need to change anything. But I honestly think that you don't know whether your situation is, as optimized as it could be. You don't know whether you're on track or you're not on track unless you, really engage in professional help to see whether you can get there. Mm-hmm. When should you see a financial advisor? The best time that you can see a financial advisor is yesterday. The second best time you can see a financial advisor is today. And that's really in that time is your greatest asset. If in any investment, in anything that you're doing that's, over the long term and anything that you're trying to achieve, the more time that you have to do it, the better off you're going to be. Let's say you've got a marathon that you're running in a year's time. When's the best time to start training for it?
Yep.
As soon as you possibly can, because the sooner that you start, the more time that you've got to, address anything and make sure that it's, in its best possible position before game day.
Yeah. And although it sounds cliche, look, I completely agree with all of that. For those people that are listening to this and thinking, okay, yep, that's the answer and I understand that, and the more time that you've got and things, probably something that I want to leave everybody with is, if you are going through a changing circumstance as well too, I'd also flag that as well as a time to see a financial advisor. So if something in your life is changing, whether it be something as small as changing a job or a career, whether it be that you're, in a new relationship with a partner, whether it be that you're taking on some debt or you're going from a, fixed rate to a variable rate, whatever change you're going through, I definitely think, similar to your comments, Andrew, that people can benefit from seeing a financial advisor. And, even if you think you're doing all of the right things, 99% of the time, you'll be able to optimize your position, or at least, yes, definitely optimize your position, but at least you'll get value from sound checking that across a professional as well too, who looks at it day in, day out and says, yep, you're doing the right thing. Or you need to make a few tweaks here and there, and away you go.
And look, I think, a good example of that is a change in circumstance is not only a change in, your financial position and what you can do financially, but also a change in your mentality. So very similar example, but a few weeks ago, I was talking to an existing client, right? And this client is a first home buyer, but was going to be a first home buyer. So we're putting together a savings and cash flow management plan in order to help save up for a property. And unfortunately, there was a death in the family. He was in the process of receiving inheritance, hadn't actually received the money just yet. And this meant that, yes, circumstantially, things obviously had changed because there's, been a change in obviously funds, and he could have actually, purchased the property almost immediately thereafter. But as a result of everything that happened, it was relatively unexpected, but he decided that, hey, I know that, purchasing a property might be the right thing to do financially, but I've always wanted to work in the US. I've never actually done it. I actually want to take some time off, go over to the US, do some work over there, and live overseas for the space of a couple of years. And that completely changed what we were doing, where we were heading towards, and, really the mentality around money and what I want to do with my life. So just because something is impacting your financial circumstances, yes, absolutely, that's going to change a strategy and change a financial plan for you. But in addition to that, your mentality or how you're viewing things in relation to how you want to live your life is also going to change things financially as well.
Yeah, and that comes down to understanding the client's goals. I mean, mathematically, you're right. Maybe it makes sense to go down a particular pathway, but if that's not aligned with what the client wants to achieve, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And that's the real key message here, is that it's tailored for everybody in their unique circumstances and what it is that they want to achieve from their own personal life, I guess. It's not the same approach for every single client. It's different. There's some commonalities. As an example, around cash flow, no matter what you do, if you spend less than you earn, obviously you're going to be in a good position to be able to do something with the excess. So your cash flow management structure and your cash flow management strategy sits at kind of the base level and the foundation of every good financial plan. But that's a really good example in terms of what's appropriate for that client and how does that tie into the goals that they want to achieve.
And I think in addition to that, it's, I mean, and look, I'm going to, completely dispel this myth from the very beginning, but a lot of people think I don't have enough money, or I don't want to, pay for financial advice, or I don't see the value in it, or whatever it is. There's a cost barrier, right? Mm-hmm. And absolutely there's some commerciality that, comes off the back end of it. In order for us to deliver advice, there's, time, effort, money that goes into it, right? So we need to charge a fee off the back end of it. And there has been instances where you tell a client, and I've said to a client off, the back of your 15-minute clarity call that's turned into half an hour or 45 minutes, whatever it is. Look, at this point in time, I don't actually think that you need to go down fully fledged financial advice. Let's either compartmentalize into one specific area, like your, cash flow management bootcamp or whatever it is. Or, hey, you've got a really good handle on your cash flow. You've got a really good handle on your budget. You're already, have a good long-term wealth plan with your superannuation. You probably don't need us just yet. The fee that's involved is going to outweigh any benefit. Continue down the right path, or continue down this path, and let's reconvene in X amount of time. Or you probably just don't need us. You're doing the right thing, and great, we've had that pulse check, we've had that, conversation. We don't need to go down the route of financial advice, because what you're doing is, already on the right path, and you're already going to achieve your goals.
Yeah, and there's definitely value in that pulse check. Just knowing that what you're doing is correct. In my experience, that probably happens about 10% of the time, whereas the other 90%, people do need some work and assistance. Actually thinking through that, Andrew, I actually think we pivot the conversation. I did have this one on the list, but it was sort of towards the end, about some of the myths associated with financial planning. So I think they're probably a good opportunity for us to be able to address some of those and unpack them and sort of see where we land with that. But so that was the one around cost and value. What about things like, I guess commissions probably springs to mind, right? Where are we at from a commissions perspective? How do we charge clients? What does that look like? How does it work?
Yep. So look, from a commissions perspective, commissions have been removed from financial advice for, I can't even remember how long it's been, but a very significant amount of time.
Yep.
So a financial advisor, unless they're recommending an insurance product, like a mortgage broker does, they're receiving a commission from the insurer. It's standardized across the board, so there's no incentive to recommend one or another, legislated as to how much you can receive in commission with insurance advice.
Yep.
But outside of that, everything else is fee advice, or is advice for
a fee for service. Yep.
Sorry, that's what I was trying to say.
Yep.
So if we're recommending either a particular product that's going to help facilitate a goal, or if we're making a strategy recommendation, we're charging a flat fee for service for it. So we're not incentivized to sell a particular product. We're not receiving any commission or any benefit other than what we think is ultimately going to benefit the client at the end of it.
Yeah. And I just picked up on a word there that you said in there, sell. We're not incentivized to sell a product. So to be, realistic in terms of what we deliver to people as financial advisors, we sell advice. So that's what we sell to clients, which equates to peace of mind, equates to value, it equates to financial security. If and when we need a product to facilitate that advice, we'll recommend a product. But there's no incentive for us, whether it looks blue, green, yellow, pink, purple, no matter what the product is, as long as it's fit for the client's circumstances, there is zero benefit from an advisor's perspective in terms of recommending one product over another for the actual advisor itself. All of that's been removed out of the industry. So for us, as long as we get the advice and the strategy right, and the product is fit for the requirements to execute the strategy, then that's what we look at.
Yep. And while you're on that topic, explain to us, like, what's the best interest duty that an advisor needs to adhere to, and what does that mean for consumers?
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting one, because it's probably not that well known. But whenever we, and this is a similar sort of approach to the majority of professionals, but when you're acting for a client, we have a best interest duty, and essentially what it is, as the name suggests, is we have to do what's in the best interest of the client. So we can't prioritize our own interest over somebody else. It has to be in the best interest of the client. And that's part and parcel of kind of like the accepted code of conduct with being a professional. So financial advice has come a significantly long way in terms of becoming a profession. We've got professional education standards. We've got best interest duties that sit over the top of, the work that we need to do with for clients. We've got codes of conduct that we abide by. There's obviously the Corporations Act that we need to stick to. There's licensing arrangements in place with, having a financial services license. We've got an education standard that we need to adhere to. There's an exam that everybody needed to pass in order to get into it. And we need to maintain our professional development activity each and every year to make sure that we can stay on top of our game.
Yep. And so someone's gotten into, I need to see a financial advisor, and, I probably need some advice either, on a specific area or more generally. But what are the questions? What should they be asking that financial advisor?
Yeah. If you don't know sort of what I just spoke about, asking those questions around your qualifications and things, that's probably a really basic one. But the truth is, everybody who's delivering financial advice in Australia today has met all of those requirements. So if that's the case, maybe you go down the path if you're not sure about asking those questions. What are your qualifications? We'll put that aside for a sec. I think probably one of the most critical things that you can ask an advisor is, what type of advice do you deal in? Is there a particular advice, part of the advice process that you specialize in? And who are you used to dealing with in terms of your day-to-day? Because advice can be, there's a couple of different areas to it. You can specialize quite in one particular segment of the market, or you can be a bit more general and deliver advice to a general part of the population. But definitely asking the advisor if they specialize in any type of advice and dealing with any particular type of client, I think that's probably my number one.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that the scope of financial advice is so large in what you can deliver advice in, and so getting a solid understanding of, hey, these are the areas that this person really specializes in. These are the type of people that this person really helps people in, and understanding whether that marries up with what you're trying to achieve at the end of it is really key.
Yeah. Yep. And then probably off the back of that, getting a really clear understanding of an advisor's fee structure and what it is that you're actually receiving advice on. So when we deliver advice to clients, we are doing it based on a scope of advice. So we'll recommend a handful of areas to a client based on those previous conversations that we were talking about, and basically saying, look, we believe based on what you've told us that you need advice and assistance with A, B, C, and D, or whatever that may look like. And in order to receive advice on A, B, C, and D, this is what it's going to cost you, and this is what you could expect to pay. I think being really clear about what you're going to receive and what you're going to pay is critical. And that's just not necessarily with financial planning. I think that's a fairly broad brush statement that can apply to anything that you receive, but definitely understanding how that works from a fee perspective and what does that look like. I definitely think that's the case. And you should be receiving that. It should be fairly clear anyway, but that's definitely worth getting clarity on if you're not in that position.
Yeah, and I think another thing with it as well is, what do you want to see at the end of it is another thing that is really important to kind of have a bit of an idea on before you go into the meeting with a financial advisor. Is what do you want to see? Do you want help with a particular transaction? Do you want help with a particular advice area? And that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want anything further off the back end of it. Do you want more support long term? So most, if not all, financial advisors will also offer a service whereby they're managing a client's financial affairs long term. They're reviewing their strategies, their products, the client's circumstances on an ongoing basis to make sure that not only what you're setting up today is correct and in its fit for purpose, but also that it's something that is also going to be appropriate long term and moving forward as well.
Yeah. And probably the last one that I always tend to smile at, Andrew, and tend to chuckle with is, what's the difference between a financial advisor and a financial planner?
What is it?
There's actually no difference. So in law, you can't actually call yourself one or the other. Those names or those titles are actually protected under law, but they're used interchangeably. In terms of my particular preference, I tend to use financial advisor because we deliver advice. Yep. Planning is part of the process and part of what we do, but it's not necessarily, I don't think, a good description of what we deliver. Financial advice is what we deliver. Planning is part of the process. So, but you can use each of them interchangeably. Yeah, the fact that I've given it so much thought is interesting.
Yeah, maybe kind of depicts your personality.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think that kind of covers it in terms of, what you can expect when you see a financial advisor, some of the things that you should be considering, thinking about, and also the process as well. So hopefully that's provided a little bit more clarity to all of our listeners and all of our viewers as well.
Thank you for your time. If you need any further information, feel free to reach out. We're always more than happy to have a chat. Like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
Just a reminder to our listeners that the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and it is not intended as personal recommendations for the audience. Please consider whether the information suits your circumstances before acting on it. This information is provided by Billy Amiridis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Pty Ltd. authorized representatives and credit representatives of AMP Financial Planning.